Okay, so today I'm just doing a little maintenance on my car. It's coming up on 200k. We're actually at about 189 plus change, so 190,000 miles. And so I decided it's a lazy Saturday and I'm changing the oil anyway because it's due. And so I decided to change the spark plugs. I'm also going to change the air filter, and that's pretty much it. Just spark plugs, air filter, oil. You know, just routine maintenance. Nothing's really gone wrong with the car, but I wanted to show you guys really quick. So let me see if my phone will focus on this in a manner that you can actually see. So here is the new spark plug. Hold on. Okay, so right here is my new spark plug. Of course, you can see it's all nice and shiny. They're both the same thing. The old one and the new ones, they're all OEM spark plugs. But as you can see, this top part here on this one is worn down to a tip. It's worn down very thin. And then over here on this one, it's nice and fat and new. And then this part down here, I think it's iridium. Yeah, it's an iridium electrode, and it's held up really well. I mean, that's what you pay for when you get these iridium electrode spark plugs. There are cheaper options, but you know, I decided it's something that I'm going to change maybe every 100,000 miles. Why not spring for the nice one? If you can see on this one, see, this is the #1 plug, and I like to keep them in order so that I can see if there's any kind of problem with the engine, like one cylinder is burning excessively lean or rich or something like that. I can identify which plug came out of which cylinder. This is #1, which it's not much worse than the rest of them, but the problem you can see is a lot more apparent. You can see how thin that's worn down. I mean, it's almost like a blade. And then but the nice thing about modern engines, you know, with fuel injection and all that, is they tend to stay burning really clean. The early models with the EGR valve that used to just shoot a bunch of soot and oil all through the engine, you know, those were serious problems. But the new ones, they burn fairly clean. You know, it's just routine maintenance. These plugs that you're looking at, they have a minimum of 150,000 miles on them, and I say a minimum because I know that I've personally driven this car 150,000 miles. Now, as far as when the plugs got changed before I got the car, probably not, since they're only scheduled to be changed every 100,000 or so, and I bought the car way before 100k, so they're probably in reality pushing 180,000, close to 200,000 miles, so they're due for a change. So I'm gonna put them in and finish up my job with the air filter, and then put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So while I'm doing this, real quick tip for those of you who aren't too familiar with the idea of changing spark plugs. You've probably done it maybe once or never, and so I'm going to give you guys real quick tips. So this one, these plugs are all gapped. They come gapped from the store, and then what happens is they have, I'll show you, I just dropped one of these over here. They have this little plastic sleeve that goes over it so that when it bounces around, it doesn't affect the gap. It stays right where it's supposed to be. When you're installing spark plugs on a 4-cylinder engine, and even more so on a V8 or a V6, sometimes these plugs are hard to get to. Always make sure you have the correct socket, okay? The plug socket, you can't even see anything down there. Let me see. You can kind of see it, but the plug socket has a piece of rubber in there that holds the spark plug in place while you're lowering it down into the engine. So with this properly installed, see, I turn it like this and it's not gonna fall out. So you always want to do that. Make sure you get the right socket, and take your time. If you have to, if you're in an awkward position where you have to get a swivel on there or whatever, make sure you get it, and always tighten your spark plugs by hand, okay? Now, you're gonna have to finish it off with a socket, but screwing it in, you should always be able to screw it in by hand. If you can't do what I'm doing right now and just hold it with your hand or with a glove, and just snug it all the way down, you're probably cross-threading it and you're going to cause yourself some problems. You should always be able to do it by hand. And then once you've done it by hand, once you have all your plugs in and they're hand tightened, then you can put the ratchet on there and snug it down. And I can even do this with one hand, because most of them, these spark plugs, they have either a taper, which you can see the taper seat here, or some of them will have a crush washer. You see that taper right there, and that's where it seats onto the head. Or they have a crush washer, and so it doesn't take a lot of torque to seat these down. Like, I can do this with one hand. You don't want to put any kind of force on the end of it like this, because you might you'll twist the spark plug, and then you can just snap it, and then you got a whole new problem. You end up having to get a whole new spark plug, or even worse yet, the spark plug might break down inside there, and that's different. But anyway, so yeah, once it's hand tightened, then you can tighten it down with the ratchet, and you'll be set. So let me see if I can set this in a way that you can see what I'm doing, which is pretty straightforward. It's just a matter of tightening like that. And if you're unsure, or you've done this, you're doing this for the first time, you're not sure what you're gonna do or how tight to tighten it, you can look up the spec sheet and get a torque wrench, and it'll tell you exactly what torque specs to put your spark plugs in and tighten them down to, so that they won't loosen back out on you. My air filter, and it's got, I don't know, about 100, it's got right around 100,000 miles on it, because I change it at 100k, and it doesn't look too bad until you bring the new filter next to it. Okay, then you can really see the difference in the two filters. So yeah, it's time to change this bad boy out. That junk, and this one goes in. So now the last part of the equation, after you do your oil change, so turn the key on, and in a second my message will pop up, but all kinds of messages. Brake lamp fault, which I gotta change that bulb. I got it here. I gotta do that now. Completely forgot about that little bad boy. Engine oil change due. So the engine oil change due, which that pops up every 10,000 miles. I was really wary about changing oil in that long an interval, but I let it go to 10,000 a couple times, even as far as 12, and it wasn't a problem. The oil came out nice and clean, and it wasn't worn, and there's zero sludge buildup in the head by the valve, so it should be okay. But anyway, so to reset that, all you gotta do, one foot on the brake, one foot on the X, and you hold it there, and service oil reset in progress. And I don't know, it takes a few seconds. I think it takes like 10 seconds, and then it'll say oil service reset or whatever. But you keep your foot on the one on the brake and one on the accelerator for the whole time that it's showing that message, and now it says oil reset complete, and that's all done. So the next time that I start the car up, it will not give me that oil service message. So this is a somewhat unrelated topic, but I'm going to show you. So my this is in the trunk, and this is the tail light. This is the side where my brake light bulb has failed, which I've changed a few of these bulbs since I've had this car. I mean, like, I go through a brake light bulb pretty much every 5-6 months. But so this little panel I just popped off of here, and then it has these little plastic butterfly wash nuts, you know, and you hand tighten them and loosen them. The thing that I'm going to show you though, if you look right here, you see on this light right here, you see that little hairline crack? When I was taking this off once, I actually was pulling it away from the body of the car, and this got snagged and it just snapped right off. So to save you the headache of doing that, when you take those two little butterfly nuts off, you want to pull the light backwards away from the car. Just pull it straight back, it'll pop out, and then you can replace your bulbs as needed, and you won't break your tail light like I did. Okay, so I started the car up, went around the block, and first of all, let me show you. So that right there is the check engine light for what is quite possibly my catalytic converter. And then this is my traction control is not functioning because of what may be my steering angle input sensor is not working. So the traction control isn't working. But it idles really smooth. I mean, like, with the exception of hearing the engine and seeing the tachometer needle, there's no indication that this engine here, hold on. See that? I mean, the water is wobbling because I just set it up there, but there's no vibration. Like, there's zero ripple cloud on that water. It is dead steady. That's how smooth this engine idles now. I'm definitely happy with changing those spark plugs out.